Alright, Chapter 11, Working with Part Configuration. Configuration, also known as simple figs, simply is configs, are variations in part with which dimension or the change feature suppressed, turned off. Other items such as color custom properties may be controlled. Configurations enable you to have variations within a single part file, which can be both convenient and efficient. Shepard deals only with the part configuration, but assemblies can also have configurations. Assembly configurations use the different part configurations, among other things. This will mean more to you than you learn about part configurations. Assembly configurations are discussed in Chapter 19, Controlling Assembly Configuration. Display state. One example configurations have the many tab with the fasteners and within a single part file. For example, the socket head cap screw can come in thousands of sizes, which can vary efficiency. Reuse the same sketches feature for the create. All those are based on the table of configured parts, but they can also have features that you can turn on, off, and on, suppressed and unsuppressed, respective, such as cross drive with a slotted driven or a slotted drive. Cross drive or a slotted drive change the dimensions or suppressing or unsuppressing features most commonly due to the techniques available for the configuration. There's some overlap between the top of configuration display states, which the color and hide show states for being control both methods. When you have options, always control visual properties for the display using display states because they require fewer resources, which mean they have been faster. Display states or part documents are covered in more detail in Chapter 5 using visualization techniques, and Chapter 19 controlling assembly configuration and display states. In this chapter, you will learn to control part configurations, explain the design table, create a design table, examine the benefits using configuration publisher, controlling items with configurations. With every new release Solidworks software, it seems more items become configurable. That is able to be driven by configuration. Configuration items for this part include the following: feature dimension tolerance driving or driven state, the suppression feature for the equation sketch relation for the feature start with the end condition, sketch planes used in the device sketch, materials configuration, special custom properties, part body features and face colors, derived configurations, properties that be assigned such as mass and center of gravity, base of the split parts and sketch pattern instances, sketch text, sketch feature size, scale feature sizes, custom threads, equations, global variables, helix parameters, and size of whole wizards. Size of the whole wizard holes. You can control configuration in several ways. Make change manually. Dimension feature view, the configuration feature modifying configuration table to use the Excel based design table using configuration publisher. Alright, so we've had the find configuration, which looks like a tree of two boxes. SolidWorks configurations are listed in Configuration Manager. This is a tab at the top of the Feature Manager area shown in Figure 11 and 1. You can split the Feature Manager interface by dragging the split button on the top of the panel with the using function shown in Figure 11 and 1. Enables you to see the configuration part manager of the upper panel, the Feature Manager lower power panel. With this, also remember that you can detab the Property Manager from the left side of the panel area. So now we're looking at the configuration manager, and we've looked at we got X with one of them, the tables marked as number 4, display states. Then show the part property manager, configuration manager tab, and datum. And then show the tree history and split bar used in separate featured manager from the two panels. Delete configuration. When you're starting using a standard template, each part of the default figure name the default. There is nothing special about the fig. You can rename it, even delete it. At least one configuration must always remain in the tree. You cannot delete the configuration that is currently active. If you want to remove the configuration, switch to another configuration, double-clicking the other configuration with the configuration manager, then delete one that you want to delete the one you want to remove. If you try to delete part configuration by being used by Open Assembly, SolidWorks will simply issue the note none of the selected entities can be deleted without explanation. And this for the detailed configuration part of the assembly, but the assembly is not currently open. The next time assembly is open, it will issue the message: the following component configurations could not be found with the component configuration name. The configuration was renamed, but the same configuration will be used. Otherwise, the last active configuration will be substituted for each instances. You can delete groups of configurations using Windows Select, Tool Shift Select, or Control Select in the Configuration Manager. You can also use the right mount button, but much like a regular feature of the Feature Manager, none of the configurations selected for deletion may be active or referenced by other open resolved documents. Sorting configuration. Configuration Manager can be be listed in one of 5 ways. Numeric sorts in ascending numeric order, literal sorts ascending in alphabetical order, manual allows you to determine the order and drag and drop, history-based sorts by creation and date, design table sorts by order in which they are found in the design table. Control the sort option as you use right-click on the name of the part in the Configuration Manager tab to select the tree order. If you work the Excel drive with configurations with the table, all Excel sort options will be available to you. Enhancing alphabetization. Alphabetized order is signifying because of many of the other sections Solidworks are not alphabetized, which causes problems when you are browsing for the item's larger list section with the non-alphabetized. Include help contents file type list for the open and save dialog box file location setting tools option file locations and any color list and several of the others, which include the submittal enhancement request of the Solidworks alphabetized list of one topic that would benefit everyone. Should be easy for the Solidworks to implement. Name and the configurations. In order to sorting alphabetized work, you must first properly name the configuration. For example, if you have a list of the size of the configuration from 1 to 100, then you should use 001, 002, and then all the way up to 100 as your syntax. This makes it easier to browse your configuration names. The syntax becomes most important when you place the part with many configurations into assembly because you must select configuration for the list type of the first few numbers even faster, easier than scrolling to it. To understand the technique better, you can open the part called Chapter 11 Configuration Name Solid Part with the download files with the Split Feature Manager and change one over the panel Display Configuration Manager. Clicking one of the configuration names and type the number between 001 and then 100. The highlight will scroll the number and what that typed. By thoughtfully selecting the configuration names, you can save yourself and your coworkers lots of time inserting select configurations into assembly. Activating configurations. While on this part chain with the display with one configuration to another, you must first switch for the Configuration Manager panel. Either double-click with the desired configuration, right-click on it, and select Show Configuration. Alternatively, you can right-click with the Configuration Manager, and select with the Show Preview is found in 11.2. A small preview thumbnail will display with the Properties Manager panel, however, all the configuration previews, for example, the department configures have been generated automatically by design table configurations. May not have previews because of the configuration itself with never actually been rebuilt. Previews exist only when the configuration has been activated at least once. Image on the screen is generated with the part saved. The Solidworks store both body geometry and the preview image of the part the next time they access the configuration software and does not have to rebuild everything again. Storage space is cheaper than rebuild time. So now we went to the Configuration Manager and we've shown the preview. You can even select configuration while opening a file. By doing this, you will save the time and not rebuild the model. To take advantage of this option, you must use file open interface, which is shown in Figure 11.3. You can select the configuration for the lower left drop-down configuration list. Right now, this is in the opening. Selecting configuration from the open dialog box. We've now went to selected our part and solid part, and we've now gone to mode size 1. Creating configurations. You can create configuration manually with the modified dialog box feature the modified configuration table shown in Figure 11.4 through Excel-driven design tables. Design tables are extremely useful in the situation when more than a few configurations, more than a few items being controlled. Also, more people will be working with the data more tightly. You need to control it, and it would be safe. The best practice to say that anytime you use the configuration items being controlled can be handled by the design table, you should use the design table. Alright, let's Figure 11.4 shows selecting the modified dialog box. We've gone over to the configurations in the corner of the dimension of the modified box, and we've now put this to all configurations. For now, I'm going to focus on creating manipulating configuration manually so you can become familiar with them without worrying about Excel design tables and indexes. I will talk about design tables near the end of the chapter. Creating a new configuration. To make it a new configuration, right-click with the top level of the Configuration Manager with the display of the part and the symbol with the name of the part. Select with the Add Configuration, New Configuration with the copy of the current active configuration. If you right-click the existing configuration, SolidWorks makes a derived configuration, which I will discuss later in this chapter. Figure 11.5 shows right mouse menu with the property dialog box that you can use to set up the new configuration. So we went to the part, and we've done the configurations, and now we're adding a configuration, and then we're going to go to those configuration properties, configuration name, description, use of bill of materials, custom properties, bill of materials, part name, numbers, when used to bill materials, configuration names, advanced options, suppression, new feature, use configuration, special color, add, rebuild, save, mark. Using configuration properties for the option. Name of the configuration is important, mainly quick access for the organization. Purpose of the configuration description is important because of the display of the configuration manager, even in the assembly tree. You can also use the feature manager filter search for the configuration description. This is important when you name the configuration numerically rather than descriptively. You will also want to have the description but not included in the name. The configuration description can also appear with the place of file name in an assembly tree display. Configuration descriptions can be driven manually of the root of the configuration property dialog box through a design table that have been many configurations to manage the display configuration description through the right mouse button shown in figure 11.6. Bill of materials option is a set of configuration properties to use the file name, configuration name, custom name of the user. Specify. You can save the setting with a template. You can achieve the control over configuration through the combination of the configuration properties with advanced option, which I discuss next. Figure 11.6. Now we've went over the to the configuration description of the part. We went to tree display. We've now see that it shows tree, feature name, description. Don't show configuration names. Show configuration names. Show component description, component configuration. Show component configuration description. Show display names and comment indicator. Best practice. Also, although you can change the preferred setting at any time, of the best practice to make the template earlier when you're using Solidworks to model parts. Solidworks remembers the bill of materials option, advanced options you set with the default configuration. Use the document with the templates for the true with both part and assembly templates. Use advanced options. Use the advanced configuration options found under the button manual of the configuration property manager shown in figure 11.5. Suppress new features and made suppression options suppress the new feature for the add for the other configuration part while the option for the active to suppress any of the assembly mates that are added to another active configuration in an assembly. Relying on these options regardless of the setting you can create the problems if not use the design table manually. Controlling option large number of the configuration can be very error prone. Personally I will wish to feature for the many mates option will separate because I like to the suppress feature for the option to be on, while I would prefer suppress mates option to be off. Use the configuration specific color colors are actually driven by the display states. For the display state of the turn, it can be linked to the configuration of the driving color for the configuration models. You should have the display states. Just linking them into the configuration. Add a rebuild on size mark. When you add a rebuild on size marking option enabled, next time your model rebuild, the configuration will rebuild whether they're active or not. Generally, we think the rebuilds being a good thing because they keep all the relationship and geometry up to date, but one of the problem rebuilds, if so, they can take a lot of time, especially true when they have a lot of configuration that need to be rebuilt. Be careful of how you use the switch. Also, increase the file size. You very often with the trade-off between the option like this. Some of the other variables you decide yourself what is most valuable to you. Using a modified dialog box. Modified dialog box enables you to change the dimension. Double-click with the dimension, changing the value. When changing the dimension, modified dialog box in part adds more than one configuration additional button. Shown in figure 11.7 appears on the modified dialog box. So now we've went into the modified configuration. It has this configuration, all configurations, specified configurations. Modify these three options: the configuring dimension configuration, all configurations, specified configuration, all configuration, default option. Choose the specify the configuration option. Open the dialog box, which is shown in figure 11.8. We've now opened all the configuration modifying box, specify the configuration, change the dimension of the multiple configurations, specify the configuration to be modified, and now we have default size 1 and 2. Select all, reset, selection, open, cancel, and help. Using negative dimensions. The negative dimensions serves only to change the direction of the dimension, then negative dimension is discarded. If it does not stay with the dimension, an equation that resolves the negative dimension flips instead of the dimension every time that will rebuild. They may be a useful trick, but most modeling situation is annoyance. When putting in a negative dimension, modify dialog by the dimension, change the sensitive direction, negative sign that disappears after one rebuild. If you put the negative dimension modify configuration dialog box, it also disappears and change the direction of the dimension with all the configuration. Enter the negative dimension into the design table. Negative is retained until the next time you open the design table. The same the dimension is retained only over the configuration to which you assign the dimension values. Note, the design table functionality is something that arouses my suspicion. I would not build with the design intent scenario based on the negative dimension design tables. The functionality seems unintentional, unstable, and otherwise subject to change. Negative dimensions can be assigned only to sketch dimensions, not to feature dimensions. Change the extrusion direction, making the blind depth of the negative. To be careful that if you instant 3D to change the direction of the extrude, Because of this may change the boss to cut in addition making it go in the other direction. Using Modify Configuration Dialog Box. Modify Configuration Dialog Box shown in 11.9 enables you to create, modify the configured feature dimensions more organized in the way you simply manual methods with described earlier, but getting involved with an Excel-based design table models described later in this chapter. Now confuse Modify Configuration Dialog Box with Modified Dialog Box. Which is used to change dimensions. So this is actually a modified configuration dialog box. It is not the modified dialog box. And then there's rebuild in all configurations and the tables. You can access Modify Configuration dialog box by right-clicking the dimension feature that you want to drive the Viva the configuration with the configuration dimension of the configured feature. When modifying configuration dialog box, activate and double-click the dimension to add it to the configured feature list. You can add the configuration fly on the fly type of the appropriate box, and you can change the value, the state of the feature with the double-click of the enter of the numbers, or select the checkbox in the appropriate column. The suppress feature will use the checkbox to define whether the feature is suppressed or not. And then you use either manual Excel-based technique with modifying configuration is valuable for people who want to configure a couple of features without getting involved with a big spreadsheet. It may also be valuable to people who do not have the Excel available on their computers but want to create a more structured way to manage configuration data. You can use it to rename the dimension file with these steps. Turn on the show the feature dimension setting with the annotation folder. Select the dimension. Use Control A to select all the dimensions. Use the set the configuration dimension with the right mouse button. Use the modify configuration dialog box to rename multiple dimensions. In addition, I should mention, too much folklore exists surrounding the perceived as problematic relationship between Excel and SolidWorks. Some users claim that Excel often causes SolidWorks to crash. May come with many of the workplaces that may not have the Excels available to them, either because of the cost or because of they're using non-Microsoft solution spreadsheet. The application the user still wants functionality of the design table, even if the Excel is not installed on the machine. Icons in the lower left of the modify configuration dialog box enable you to use the dialog box more than just the dimension feature suppression, including custom properties. Modifying configuration dialog box does not give any of the control over everything. Some of the things, such as part color, some of the things have configurations such as part color cannot be driven from this dialog box. Design tables are still more powerful way to go, but modified configurations offers less flexibility and immediacy. Alright, and this shows the table with a disk on it. Using the table to views. Modifying configuration dialog box signifies to your own options, creating the editing configuration. Two very nice tools of creating power of the SolidWorks configuration are all the table views. Hide show custom properties. Table views tools enable you to keep small tables of only the parameters you want to show. The parameters drop-down list enables you to select what the table view you want to display with the create new one. Using drop-down list with the parameter headings of the suppress so the display with the parameter new tab table view. Dividing what might otherwise be a large dimension table to several tables, which help to keep the data organized, easy to access. Figure 11 to show the configuration manager of the part of the configuration manager and the table views. So now we went to the configuration manager, we went to tables, now we're using the modifying configuration table of the configured part. Alright, then it looks like an custom properties on the side, which looks like a bigger square with a little gray mark on the left. Adding custom properties, modifying configuration dialog box. Second nice option of the modifying configuration dialog box, the hide show custom property option. The bottom is just spread modifying configuration dialog box. Show the columns existing custom properties as well. The drop down list enables you to add more custom property columns. That makes it very easy to control configuration specify custom properties for the configured part. You might also try all parameter toggle at the bottom of the box to automatically pick up all the differences between the configurations. And this is the hide show custom properties option on the left. You have the custom property managers. Alright, the property tab builder enables administrators to create special tabs, pane tabs, or use the custom control custom property configuration, specific custom property configuration, specific custom property control through the design tables, custom property tabs, or the regular SolidWorks configuration, specific custom property interface. Select the method that works best for the way with you, your company, and your software. Figure 1111 show the property tab builder interface connects with the property tab builder. Click on the Windows Start button, choose the SolidWorks tool. from the menu, then place it and actually construction. The interface shows it up with the properties with the tab over the task pane on the right side of the Solidworks graphic window. So now we went to the property tab builder. Using the property tab builder, construction custom property tab for task pane. It's got a group box, text box, list, number, checkbox, radio, list a group. In the group box, custom property part, select classification, purchasing parameter, vendor part, local part number, control attributed color, control type, list caption, control properties, attributed name, the column configurations, and then save, open, and new. You can give the type of the interface enable the administrator of the synchronized custom property value. If you do the specifying the difference for the interpretation, task plane, interference is easy, but highly customizable. Notice for the create regular custom properties for the custom, configure custom properties for the option. They can be independently with each for the property value entered in this interface. After you create a property tab file called template, save the location included with the tools option file location custom property files. If you have only one template for a document type part and assemble the drawings, it automatically appears with the display with the custom property tab with the task pane. If you have multiple templates established, the custom property tabs lets you choose which one to use. Figure 11 and 12 show the custom property tab in the use of the SolidWorks task pane interface. So now we've gone to using custom property tabs, assigning custom properties part and reset, applying reset part properties part number to radio button off the shelf custom design manufacturer. Use derived configuration. Derived configurations are configurations that are dependent on other configuration. You can create them from the right mouse button configuration. They appear with the indented underneath the parent configuration. Figure 11.13 show the right mouse button position derived configuration tree. Derived configuration maintains same value property of the parent configuration. Left the break line to a child with derived configuration explicitly, changing the value of the child configuration for all of the configuration items. Child configuration value changes when the parent configuration value changes. One very nice application of derived configuration is use the symbol configurations of the set with the property name feature added to the parent configuration, also added to the derived configuration. You can do this by selecting advanced options, suppress feature, turn it off. In the property manager for the configuration called the derived configuration, inherit only features that added to the parent, not to other configurations. You can use this simplified configuration for fine element analysis or FEA, making drawings and end models where all the edge breaks have actually been modeled and simplified larger assembly. You can also use them for the reverse complex configuration rather than simple one to have the core configuration include fillets and rendering purpose of the otherwise not use the manufacturer documentation process. In addition, you create maintain derived configurations for using design tables which are discussed in the next section. Figure 11.13 shows the grading and placing the derived menu with the right mouse button in the configuration. We've added a derived function to it, configuration, and the configuration that showed up in the right hand another box. Understanding how file sizes affect speed. Long-standing dispute has raged over the effects of the file size on speed. However, the facts from the SolidWorks created configuration store the information about the 3D geometry of the profile thumbnail configuration inside of the part file, which is not default sometimes when only one activated configuration data is saved. You can make it faster to activate the configuration next time because it only has ready store with the display data rather than read parameters and recalculate new display data. But as a result, solve with the stored data makes the file larger but enables you to avoid recalculating. Many people assign more than importance to the file size than I do. They use the criterion on which of the base decision about features and techniques you do not use. I have the choice between using a single file instead of multiple files using configuration. I prefer the single file technique, even though I guarantee to produce larger files, in some cases much larger files. This is truly special with the choice of larger files and longer calculation time. Libraries and parts can often be made with a manageable using configured parts rather than many individual parts. Storage space, cheaper and easier for the upgrade than process. In the end, reading stored data rather than recalculating is faster. The hence chapter with this when SolidWorks can store data will probably be needed again at some point. With a good idea, the advantage of the storage, usually taking advantage of the single file technique. Storage space is cheaper than rebuild time. The result of the configuration to finalize increase the file size, while SolidWorks never loads all the data with the default larger file. Now it's longer to open, save, move, and perform just as any operation. Fortunately, SolidWorks can work with very large data sets. There are a couple of options that can tip the balance of the favor between saved data and recalculated data. In this configuration, right-click on the name of the part and click Add Rebuild on Save. Mark figure 11.4 show the option available. Add mark for this configuration means rebuild on the save mark will be added to the current configuration next time the part is saved. The configuration active one will be rebuilt and the data saved. So now we've purged the setting. We've gone to the directory of the right-click the configuration for the configuration table on the right mouse button, and we've run a rebuild and save mark. We can add the mark for this configuration, add mark to all configurations, specified configuration, remove mark, or purge data from all configuration. Add mark from all configuration forces the software to rebuild, update all configuration next time the part is saved. Be aware of the time required for the operation like this will depend on the complexity of your part, number of the feature versus the number of the configuration. Add mark for specified configuration presents you with the dialog box set of the configuration rebuild for which to save the data. Remove the mark and purge data. All configuration reduces the size of the file by purging all configuration data. The greater the file size, but it has a adverse effect on the performance when Solidworks must rebuild configurations. The four options give you the choice over the control over the importance. Figure 11.15 shows what happens with just right-click specific configuration. Notice some of the configuration on the floppy disk symbol. The individual configurations have been marked to be rebuilt on this save. The right mouse button shows the reflect selected configuration is currently marked with this symbol, and it can be unmarked. So marking unmarked configuration rebuilt for the save, and now it's given the disk symbol. And you can also show configuration, add a derived configuration, show preview, delete the properties, add rebuild, unsave, mark, comment, go to collapse or customize menu. To use these options, large scale, the new system option purges all cache configuration data. You can find the setting tool option performance purge cache configuration data. Performance files have a negative effect to speed when sending data across the internet. Working across the network, the data is the hard drive storing data instead of the calculating. It offers a big benefit when sending data across your network connection. You should take measures to decrease the size of the file before sending it, such as zip the other compression utilities. Controlling dimension with configuration. Simply, you need only the things just one dimension, the two configurations, but you already know how to create these all mentioned. You're ready to start the configuration. Require to spend some of the time developing design intent for the part configuration. Drive change within the model of the properly model, but you can avoid feature of the sketch failures due to the dimension changing or less. Or at least you can understand what the limits of each of the dimensions need to remain within. I will start with an example of a simple block full of dimension block with a three-dimensional. Make sure that it's manually created at least two configurations. Double-clicking with the model face open all dimensions. Double-clicking with one of the dimensions open to the familiar modified dialog box for your 11.7. Show the small difference of modifying with the dialog box, not with the drop-down list when specifying whether the change appears only with the configuration. To all configurations, specified configuration. If you selected specified configuration, then the dialog box listing existing configurations will allow you to select which configuration to get the change. After you finish, you can toggle back and forth between the configuration, double-click on each of the configuration manager. Although simple to forget it, change with the drop-down list with all the configuration settings with either the configuration or the specifying configuration setting you to apply with the change all the configuration, building a configuration manually at the time with a few simple changes. It may become unwieldy if you were to change more than a few dimensions, handling only a few configurations in this way. You would then have to remember which dimension were changed to which configurations. As you can see with the design table, the better method of the multiple display dimension. Alright, so now we've moved part over to part, up and down and up. There's one down part and down, and this is the suppression feature. Just like turning it off, the feature appears with the grayed out text and the feature manager. The configuration suppresses the feature of the one configuration and presses it to suppresses it to another. Also, while refeature may be suppressed, the sketch associated with it not necessarily suppressed. When you're dealing with the manual configuration techniques, there are two methods for the controlling suppression: manually suppressing feature and creating configurations with the appropriate option for the inclusion of the new feature I discussed previously in this chapter. In addition to the suppression toolbar button, you can use the unsuppress with the dependent functions. When you suppress the feature, any feature of the dependent on it's also suppressed. If they use the unsuppressed feature with the unsuppressed only feature itself, however, the unsuppressed with the dependence brings back all the dependent features as well. High performance, suppressing complex feature of the great way that improve the performance experience. U for the create with the configuration part with the simplified configuration where the parts and fillets, parents and fillets extreme with the text feature for the suppress become the most important with the starting with the work of the assembly for the reason I discovered the assembly with the chapter main configuration called simplified for each part that can create great advantage of the make with the set configuration with the template file so no new parts and assemblies automatically have the file built into them. Generally, Solidworks uses employ with a combination of these methods, mainly because of the configuration are not usually started with a complete model. They often add when model is still with the progress. The feature for the added after the user creates configuration on the left side with the figure 1116 with the C with the feature alternately unsuppressed with unsuppressed tree. Text and icon suppressed features are grayed out. You can suppress the feature with the right mouse button feature for the edit menu. The tool on the toolbar. Suppress button is not on the toolbar by default, but you can find with the command dialog box tools customize commands. Along with the other buttons of the feature of the toolbar, that only the edit menu offers the option unsuppressed for the dependence and this configuration, all configurations, specify configurations options for each suppression, unsuppress, suppress, unsuppress for the dependence function. So now we're suppressing a feature. We have an extrusion 1, extrusion 2. We've gone to extrusion 1. It's shut off and then it's been featured again. When you unsuppress with the dependent, you save lots of time hassle looking for all the features depending on the feature of the suppress because it's not available on the right mouse button functions to the left. I use the last of the most might otherwise be. May also more control of the use of the simple suppression unsuppression feature of the three options suppress, unsuppress, unsuppress with the dependence, and of the three option configuration, all configurations, specify configuration. In this case, where the drop down menu of edit suppress offer more detailed function than you can find in the right mouse button menus. Our control custom properties several reasons may compel the custom properties include with the integration search of the product data management system, automatically filling out the drawing title blocks and adding information on the bill of materials. When you use custom property configuration, you must use the configuration specific with the custom property interface with the appropriately configured custom property tab with the modify configuration dialog box, which enables you to have the custom property obtained with each of the configuration standard custom properties applied with the top level part and keep the same value with all the configuration. Configuration specifically functional, you flow with the situation, the different part number of the configuration, many of the other situations limited mostly by use of the configuration custom tab. The summary information from the dialog box still appears. Applies custom properties that do not change with the configuration of this part of the interface managing for the custom properties manually shown in figure 1117. You can access the dialog box shows in file with the property from this menu. Configuration system specifically tab the summary information dialog box. We now went to the summary information box. They have summary custom configuration specific. You can add the apply to property and small tables with the row numbered columns, property, type of the value, test expression, estimated value, and bill of material quantity, non-edited list. Okay, cancel and help. You can also link custom property with the mass property model, dimension, link value for the sketch text with the global variable to select from the drop-down list for the value of the text expression column, which appear with the select a cell of the column to link with the custom property model, the dimension. Simply activate the value text expression box in the summary information interface that you want to populate. Click the dimension in the graphic window, again, managing the data for a single configuration only with a few configurations easy enough, however they can quickly become unwieldy, which using design tables can make a huge difference. Controlling sketch relation, individually suppress and unsuppress sketch relations using configuration figure 11 and 18 show the display with the delete relation property manager interface at the bottom of which of the configuration pane will suppress a relation select with the list and the select with the suppress option relation selection with the delete option. Remember select the suppress option relation section above the delete buttons. Remember to display and delete relations can be located through the main tools, relation, display, and delete, or double-clicking the sketch relation symbol within the sketch. Display and delete show the perpendicular eye. Display relation configuration sketches relation selected. It needs horizontal. Specified suppress. It needs delete or delete all. Indian owner and sunlight configurations. This configuration, all configurations, specific configuration, controlling sketch planes. You configure offset distance from the option of the extrude. You configure with the sketch plane with the sketch for the even the feature for the sketch plane. Property manager for the interface expand with the configuration are present. Shown in figure 11 and 19. The axis for the sketch plane. Property manager right click on the closed sketch. Select for the edit edit sketch plane option. Another way to change the sketch plane is use the plane, put sketch on the off plane with the plane that can otherwise be driven in dimension. For example, use the reference sketch geometry. Actually, moving the sketch to another plane can cause sketch to rotate or flip. Moving the plane is on its better option that does not cause sketch to rotate or flip. Our sketch plane property manager interface configuration. Into the sketch plane, you have sketch plane front, X, Y. This configuration, all specific configuration, and that sketch plan property manager book, Bob. Configuration change of the sketch plane is indiscriminately can have serious consequence for the model of the facing plane normals. Sometimes the different directions cause the sketch to flip or rotate mirror. When you change the one plane to another, the one strange result is changing it back to the original location causes the sketch to flip again, but a different way so that it does not go back to the original location orientation. As a result, every time you change the configuration, the sketch could appear with a new unexpected location orientation. That was the sketch plane, with a plane and a center line drawn through it, and it's been blued and shaded. Alright, then it shows opening a part and controlling configuration inserted parts. Inserted parts may also be called derived or base parts. However, both of these terms are obsolete. Inserted base parts are discussed in detail in Chapter 31, Modeling Multi-Bodies, and Chapter 33, Employing Master Model Techniques. Inserted parts place features one part inside another part. Inserted part becomes the feature of the feature manager for the child part. You can insert the value of the geometry itself that you bring in the forward the reference geometry sketch data. Feature configuration split with the custom property breaking the link of the original part if you like. Role configuration inserted part of the configuration inserted part can be controlled with the child component. For example, you may have the design engine block for an automobile. This engine block is a casting configuration. You have both the 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder blocks in a single part profile. The model represents as a cast engine block. The next step is to make the block of secondary machining operations such as face, mating, surface, boring cylinders, drilling, taping holes from the threaded with the connections, and so on. As a result, these cast part inserted into a machine part that the configuration is then selected before you add the cut feature for this. The name is suggested you have inserted part. Choosing insert part of the menu interface, the same with the configuration shown in Figure 1120. Simply right-click with the inserted part feature of the list with external references that would seem to make more sense if the configuration can be selected with the part file inserted, but it does not work this way. You must select the configuration after the part is inserted. Alright, so now we went to the configuration of the part and the right list. We right-click menued list of external references for the chapter configuration name. Using library features can have configuration. They can carry those configurations with them into the part with which they are placed. Unfortunately, part configuration cannot reference the different library feature configuration, although library features can be configured after you drop them into a part and click on OK. The configuration will no longer be accessible unless you have selected a link to the library part. The part of the configuration cannot set with the configuration of the library feature. Part configuration can change the dimension of the library feature. Configuration library features are created exactly the same way that the configurations are created in the other parts. Technique for saving the configuration of the library feature is discussed in Chapter 18, using libraries assembly features in Whole Wizard. Using design tables. In addition to describing some of the basic concepts that involve with the configuration, first part of the chapter presented is reason to use the design table, for example, with manual configuration management, which can be haphazard, highly prone to mistake. With the design table, lay everything on the Excel spreadsheet. Although many new users ask whether they use the different replacement spreadsheet program, you may use the Excel for the design table. Excel is a format that is easy to read and print out. Even non-Solidworks users understand and work with it. Although there is some special syntax that you might use with the design table for more uses, Solidworks created syntax automatically for you. Therefore, the minimal manual data entry for the careful to name the dimension feature for the configuration properly. Design tables should be easy to understand and manage. Excel, you can also color Excel rows and columns in the same way. Large amounts of tabulated data are easier to sort through. In addition, with the design table, Excel, that you can also use the Excel calculation capabilities. Best practice when using equation design table to be sure the name of the dimension, sketch features, and other the configured items both do not mix with the design table with SolidWorks equations. Because of the fact that the Excel equations are far more sophisticated than those of SolidWorks, driving dimensions from too many locations can be confusing. When editing the part, they also have forgotten the details of how the part was built. You should document the design intent using comments and feature for the design journal. You should also use the add comments design table as needed. Alright, identifying what can be driven in the design table. Just because something can be configured does not necessarily mean that it also be driven by the design table. The small list of items of configured sketch by configuration, suppressed sketch relation, suppressed dimension. Suppressed dimensions become undriven dimensions. However, the good news is that many items that can be driven in the design table figure 11 and 1 of these items, along with the associated syntax for the most updated list, check with the SolidWorks help documentation. So it has configuration, sort of syntax. So there's a stamp configuration, at part name, possible goes in the field configuration name, default not evaluated configuration, split, stamp configuration, split feature name, configuration name, possible value in the fields, not evaluated, comment, stamped comment text blank. Configuration, stamp, description, text, configuration, name, bill of materials, stamp, part number, start, stamp, document name, parent, configuration name, text and name, default value and field is configuration name, feature suppression, stamp state, feature name, suppress, unsuppressed, present suppression state, dimension at feature name, dimension sketch name, allowed numerical values not evaluated, parent configuration created with the derived parent, stamp parent configuration name, not evaluated configuration, specific custom, stamp PRP, property name, text, and not evaluated, equation state, property state with equation at less than equation suppressed and number greater than at equations unsuppressed, later suppression state, stamp state at light name suppression unsuppressed, sketch relationship suppression state at greater than relation name at greater than a sketch name suppressed unsuppressed, user's note, stamp user note text in blank, parent feature color, parent stamp color, feature name, SolidWorks helps color, parameter design tables, sign mass, stamp SW mass, not on numerical values, mass properties, sign center, gravity X, Y, and Z coordinates, stamp SW COG allowed numerical values in format X, Y, and Z, value for mass property, dimension tolerance, stamp tolerance, and dimension name, see SolidWorks help tolerance, syntax design is able to done. Creating a simple design table. When preparing creating a design table, you generally need the appropriate name of the dimensions, sketch, and features. Remember that although the feature is most visible item, the easiest to rename, most dimensions probably belong to the sketch village, where you may also want to rename. Names should be reflected with a function location. Item is also a good idea to show the dimension of the renaming items. Remember that you can show the dimension name, select the dimension name option by choosing viewing the dimension of the names. Figure 1121 show the resulting remaining feature dimensions. And, so now we went to rename feature for the dimensions, and here's one of the following three techniques to add the design table to SolidWorks. Part 2 for the insert for the table, the design table menu, insert blank, design table, the method, start with the blank table template that contains the underlying framework, but now values, auto creation, design table, the method, populate with the new design table when existing configuration items are the difference between the configuration from file method enables you to create a design table externally with importing it. Although I prefer auto-create method is most appropriate with a new existing configuration from the file method is best way to design table to have been exported from another part, so if externally brought into the current part file. An example is I also used insert blank design table method on the website. If you want to follow along with creating the design table, you can use this part of the download material of the chapter file named Chapter 11 Design Table Start Solid Part. Figure 1122 shows the result within starting of the new block design table. You may notice that the window tile bar top side says SolidWorks. The toolbars look very much like Excel interface for the best because Excel is actually running inside the SolidWorks. Clicking outside of the Excel window causes the Excel window to close. However, there are several items outside the Excel window that you can select without window closing, such as feature of the feature menu, dimension of the graphics window. You can also rotate the panel to view graphics windows without closing the design table window. If you are very careful, you can also drive with a hitch, then hatch border of the Excel window to adjust its size or location. Interface create with the design table, the resulting blank in the design table, blank auto create from file, link to file, edit control, allow model edits for the update design table and block, and model edits will update with the design table options, new rows and column design, new parameter, new configuration, warning, updating design table, enable cell drop down list, and then it shows the list over here on the side. You can also edit the design table in a separate window, which makes the editing easier and makes adding dimension feature names more difficult. To edit the table in its own window, with the right click with the design table feature menu, select edit table, the new window, figure 1123, show the fully developed design table, show them the complexity. Although your first design table does not need to be complex, the example demonstrates that what you can do with this feature, and so fully populated design tables show the configuration name syntaxes for the table. Configuration name that goes in the first child column. The feature property names goes in the second row of the first row, reserved with the name of the table. Although automatically set up by Solidworks, because you're actually with Excel working with the design table, you can Excel with the format, how to text with the figure 1123, rotate 90 degrees column header, rotate text table to right, click with a cell, group of the cells or rows, select format cells, then select alignment table tab. In the new design table, the next step of the type of the sum of the configuration, because you've been working with the Excel fulfill functionality available to popular configuration names column. I type 3 values 001, 002, 003 with the window selected with the cell with the drag fill handle on the selection hit window to fill with the number of the pattern to populate with a large area. To find more information about this technique, look in the fill automatically number rows for the Excel help files. Next step of the fill in some of the feature dimension for the second row. The first thing we'll do is suppress the hex drives feature. Make the first feature of the list with a click on the cell B2 with a double click with the hex drive feature from the feature manager for the name of the feature and creating current suppression state or added the design table with all necessary syntax and correct spelling. To rotate the text row vertically and right click with the row number 2, select the format cells, click the align tab, determine the orientation 90 degrees. The word unsuppressed displays in all of the capital L's fully spelled out, although all you need is a U or an S. Replace the word with an S. Double click the line between the column heading and letters B and C at the top of the Excel windows to the columns B so as possible. Alternate the rest of the rows of the U and S. Either suppress or unsuppress hex drive feature vary configuration. Figure 1124 show the current state of the design table. Close the design table window, click over the OK message box for the list for the new configuration created with the design table now split with the feature for the set the lower plane with the configuration man with the double click some of the configuration. New of the configuration is specified with the hex drive that is suppressed no longer appears in the model. You can add a dimension for the dimension table that we add for the dimension. Most of the convenient display with the dimension screen and all the time to show the dimension in the part with the right click the annotation. And the feature menu, select with the display annotations. If the dimension does not display, but you have the back and select show feature for the dimension, ring dimensions, so you can clearly see them. All is shown in figure 1125. Now we went to annotation and then the tree, and then we've done to the display details, display annotations, design table. Alright, to display the design table again, locate with the configuration manager, right click with it, select edit table, editing the feature of the change with the setting, U for the design table, edit table, and the next new window with the option with the U for the layer with the simplify with many things. However, now for you the edit table option is an easy way to add new items to the design table. Note if the window appeared with the name add rows and columns, just click OK for the now. Lower panel window list of parameters that have changed, asking if you want to add any of the change parameters to the design table. If you want to add them, you just select with the parameter of the lower panel and parameter and click OK, and if not, just click OK. If the design table is displayed on top of your model, you can either move the model or move the design table. To move the design table is a bit tricky involved with driving strip of the line border of the Excel window. Remember not to grab it in the corners or the midpoints because it simply resizes it. If you click on the inside of the board, nothing will happen. If you click on the outside of the board, the Excel will close. Moving the model may be easier to do with control and dragging the blank space in the graphics window, and it will pan the display so you can see the part dimension. With cell C2, whatever the next available cell with the second row, double click with the overall link of the dimension of the graphics window. Solidworks will add the proper syntax with the design table along with the current value of the first configuration and the list filling the value of the rest configuration. Now you can calculate these values with the Excel using any of the available techniques. Exit the design table and toggle through the various configurations set with their different lengths. For example, should get you started on the more complex configuration design tables. Any dimensions are started with the design table, therefore locked and displayed in pink on the screen. A row special function can be added between the second and third rows. The rows row can be used to identify with the column headings of the user assign names. If they use the methods, you may want to hide the second row. Second row can be deleted. Headings, design table settings, figure 1122 show the properties menu of the design table. After you've created the table, you can edit the table settings by right-clicking on the table and selecting edit feature. For the edit features enables you to edit the settings of the table. It does not enable you to edit values within the table. Link the design table by selecting from the file source option. You can create the design table for the external file. You can also link the table to the external file while using the other two option block. Blank and auto create Solidworks over the Excel file with a Solidworks document. Linking with the external file may be useful to have the non-Solidworks user who is entering data in the design table within a single table controlling multiple parts. Edit control panel has two options which act as a toggle to allow model edits for the update of the design table option for the self-explanatory opposite. Block model edits for that would update with the design table option. If they allow the model edits for the options selected, you may manually change the end model to the model the next time you want to open the design table. The Solidworks will warn you about the changes that it made update with the design table. Likewise, if you try to make a manual change with the block model edits option, if it is selected, you will receive the warning value cannot change. Option of the option setting determine the behavior when you're using the allow model edit option. The new item has been configured. For example, the design table that may already exist, being manually added configurations suppresses feature configurations that have been added manually displayed somewhat differently from the configurations that have been managed by the design table. Figure 1126 show the two configurations at the bottom of the tree with square symbol. The design configurations have Excel symbols. Alright, so now we have two little Excel configuration T-tables, default and manually added configurations. After manually configuration, suppress feature for the next time to open the design table to add rows and column dialog box appear. Many even simply annoyed by this type of because they understand what it does and appears. An example shown in figure 1127. The new configuration has been manually added. It appears on the configuration block with a manually added configuration on the parameter block with it looks like with the feature for the name of the body chamfer that has been either suppressed or unsuppressed manually. Appearance of the dialog box on Solidworks is asking you if you want to include the items of the design table. And simply select the items you want to add to the design table and click OK. If you do not want to include the items of the design table, then simply click OK or cancel. Click OK. It will not be offered the choice again. If you click on the cancel the next time you open the table, the dialog box, same choice will reappear. If you never want to see the dialog box again, make sure that all the option panels shown in figure 1122 are selected. Adding rows and column dialog boxes. So now we went to table. We've looked at the configuration menu, and it's been selected, and it says add rows with the configuration parameters. Please select items you design. Configuration parameters show unselected items in the display state. Alright, editing the design table. As mentioned earlier, working with the design table open inside the Solidworks would kind of sometimes be difficult. One way of handling the problem is edit with the design table inside of the Solidworks only when you wanted to add a new feature for the column headers. By adding a new configuration, editing the failed values, edit table to separate window with the option appearing with the right mouse button, edit table. New window gives you much more flexibility in resizing Excel window, rechanging the zoom scale. Other options does not enable the double click the dimension, so it's added automatically to the column header. Caution when working with the design table to avoid conflict for the other session of the Excel by closing any other Excel windows. Combination of operating Excel spreadsheets inside both Solidworks Excel has been known to cause crashes, trigger server busy warning messages if you diligently have only one session Excel active at the time when you're working on the design table or Excel bill of materials. There is likelihood of a crash or conflict. Using Configuration Publisher. Configuration Publisher enables you to create the interface for the configuration on the fly based on the rules that you establish. The interface creates and appear with the part, put the part into the assembly, enabling you to create, customize the new configuration to go with it. The summary is putting with the toolbox and putting part of the assembly, getting in a special interface to specify the side with creating a new configuration necessary. In order to create a Configuration Publisher for this part, the part must contain a design table with at least a single row which can use as an auto-created design table if needed. You access Configuration Publisher by right-clicking the name of the part of the top line with the Configuration Manager. Select the Configuration Publisher for the menu. Figure 1128 for the Configuration Publisher interface is like a property tab builder. In this, you have the place of the interface control of the property manager that will pop up when the part is placed in assembly. So the Configuration Publisher helps you build an interface, creates configuration as you place a part into the assembly. Shows edit, so it's SW preview, Southwest preview, 3D C to C Pro preview, attributes, name, design table, variable, visual parent, up to date, 3D content central, apply and close. Aside from the user putting a part with the assembly interface, creating and using the Configuration Publisher can also be used with the 3D control content central to specify the new component size if the supplier makes part of the wide variety of sizes. Instead of creating all the size of the updating in 3D content central, you can create the rules of configuration publisher. Interface allows configuration to create automatically according to the rules. When the interface has been created, property manager entry should be under the name of the part configuration as shown in figure 1129. Property entry of the configuration manager. When part of this is placed in the assembly, property manager, which has one created with the configuration publisher, will appear and enables you to access the options side of the configuration with a new instance. Similar interface also you to upload the part of the 3D content central to allow the people to download the part. Alright, tutorial, working with configurations, and design tables. Throughout the book, this part of the one purpose of the may be useful for the other purpose of the example of the part. You of the tutorial is law for the guide curve with both guide curve with the created with the same sketch. The guide curve is made symmetrical splines where I have you the spline hand with the chain with the shape of the smoothly and controlled way. I have also the curve driven pan with the gone around the electrical shape of the dimension of the configurations can be able to have with a different type of the parts. Some of the more closely defined shape tools are often used by with the cosmetic issue that does not design concerns. Tip: at some point you decide you have made mistakes from which we cannot recover, or you simply want to start over, choose the file reload. The same as exiting the part without saving the reopening of the part to start with the beginning. Start with the configuration design table. The following step of the download material of the chapter called the chapter 11 the tutorial. Start solid part. Make a moment become familiar with this part with using rollback part editing. Each of the features term is how it's made. In particular, look at the two patterns which must be parametrically linked in the figure 1130 show for this part. Manually create configuration for the part called size 1. Remember that the creative configuration must show the configuration manager tab of the feature manager area with the right click with the name of the part with the top level to do the splitting of the feature manager window setting lower plane of the configuration manager. Figure 1130 show the chapter of 11 tutorial. Start solid part. Select the advanced option of the both the brush feature for the configuration of the color before closing. Adding configuration property change manager. Click the color button on the advanced option with the configuration property manager. Select with a different color side with the one with the color does not change immediately. It will change. After you select with the property manager, choose the view, dimension names, double click with the feature curve pattern and feature manager for the numeral 6 and the direction 1 under the period of the one of the whole of the pattern with the if you chain with your part with the blue color with the difficulty to see because the text is also blue. Chain with the name of the dimension of the whole number by clicking the dimension using the property manager. Chain with the value with the number to 8 and also chain with the drop down settings of the configuration only instead of all the configurations. If you forget to do this, you must go through the other configuration and set it back to 6. Click rebuild symbol to resemble the traffic light to show the changes before exiting the modifying text box. Note that the curve pattern 2 fails after rebuilding curve pattern 1 with 8 instances of the green check mark icon that modified with the dialog box, making the same chain with the curve pattern 2. Chain with the dimension name and the numbered pattern instance of the 8. Remember that the configuration only setting of the part should look like a figure 1131. When you double click with the chain with the configuration, Solidworks interface displays a part with a different color with a different number of the holes and ribs. After the first chain with the between the configuration changes should happen quickly because the Solidworks has sort of the geometry. Figure 1131 show the model after step 9. Choose valve with the property select with the configuration specific tab to apply with the drop down default with the type of the property name, description, value with the gray vent color with the now chain with the apply with the top down setting of the size to 1. Type of the description, new check configuration, either the name and the color that's applied with the configuration, exit with the custom property dialog box. Now that you have made the few chain with the manually following steps, will guide you to bring in these chain with the design table to use the design table with additional changes. Choose insert table to design table from the menus. Auto create with the source for the all out model. Edit select all 3 options. Option click OK to create with the design table. Figure 1132 show the design table automatically created. Has use strip button border to move the window without closing it to make take with the practice. If the window click with the right click with the design table feature menu, the select with the edit table. Move the window to the place where you can see the model clearly. If the cell of the second row of the design table is select with a different empty cell that is not in the second row. This prevents data automatically populating cells until they have been corrected data. Now double click the true one feature manager find with a half-inch dimension 1 on the screen. Right click the dimension and rename the basic THK. Alright, click with the next option with the second row, double click with a half-inch of the dimension that you just renamed. You may have the handle with the corner side, midpoint with the free side, with the size of the XL window with the see everything. Heading into the configuration row with additional value of the cell shown figure 1132 with the color number to determine with the formula that you can find with the help selection under the topic color parameter. Remember that remember this part must have the number of ribs always equal to the number of the holes. This is simple to do. Excel. Click on the first row value of the rib number, and this cell F3 is figure 1132 with the equal sign, and then click the cell on the left of the E3. You also simply type equal E3 in the cell with the link of the rib number cells is equal to the whole number cells. Using window fill feature, selecting in the lower right corner of the selected F3 cell with dragging it down, including F4 and F5 as shown in figure 1133. Click on the blank space to exit the design tab of the table with the double click with the configurations, and when the configuration manager see the result of the efforts. 11.3 show the copying equation of the other cell, dragging from this file. Bottom line. Configurations are a powerful way to control variations designed with a single part file and may aspect of the part with the figure through. Although a few manually created configurations are useful in making small number of variations, small number of configurations, but they may become unwieldy when you need to make more than a few variations of either type. Using the design tables, control of the design variations recommended because you will be able to see more clearly the change that have made over the configuration, having power Excel available. You will be available to access many of the functions not shown here, such as the lockup table, the concatenated functions, build description, configuration, names, master, create a simple black fully dimensioned sketch, name all the dimensions, create 3 configurations such that each configuration changes one of the dimensions, show all the dimensions on the screen. Take the part of the previous exercise, auto-create a design table of 10 more configurations of different dimensions, and each configuration custom property called vendor to have the different value in each configuration. Master it. Take the part of the previous exercise and feature to it. Use the design table to turn on the feature on and off and suppress. Each configuration also change the part color in several configurations. Chapter 12, Editing, Evaluating, and Troubleshooting.